Welcome inside the Broncos studio following day 8 of Broncos Camp. I am your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez, next to our lead writer on DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla. Before we get to the action from the field, big news as the Broncos lock down another corner piece of their defense, that being defensive lineman Zach Allen signing a 4-year extension. How key was this signing, not only for this team, but for this defense?
Yeah, I think what stood out to me is Zach Allen talking about this process, right? And that it wasn't full of drama, it wasn't hotly contested. Zach Allen said he told his representation he didn't want things to get out of hand or turn negative. And really, we heard again and again the trust was important, the belief between the organization and the player. We saw it also with Courtland Sutton when he signed his own extension a few days ago. And really, we heard it felt like a family environment. So you hear so much around the league, right, of these. It's difficult, and Sean Payton talked about it. When you're talking about money and you're negotiating contracts, it can be difficult. And you see around the league sometimes that can result in things being a distraction, guys not showing up. That was not the case here in Denver, and I think a lot of credit goes to both sides. The fact that this was able to be done so seamlessly, without any issues, and obviously now you keep Zach Allen for 4 years. When he got to Denver, I think the Broncos had an expectation for him coming off what he was doing in Arizona, but he must have exceeded it in every possible way, right? Like a year ago, a second-team All-Pro, 8.5 sacks, most quarterback hits of any interior defensive lineman, the most quarterback pressures of any interior defensive lineman. He's joining guys like TJ Watt, JJ Watt, Nick Bosa, when you're talking about the guys who have the number of quarterback hits he did in a season, 40 of them just last year. So this is a guy that is instrumental to what the Broncos are doing defensively. His presence allows them at times to only rush 4. They don't have to bring pressure with more guys if they don't want to because he can get there. And then Sean Payton just talks about a lot, he mentions this, that play 72 looks like play 1. And his motor, his relentlessness, the ability for him to not get tired as the game goes on, he kind of wears guys down. And so I think back to the 3.5 sacks he had against Joe Burrow and the Bengals back in December, but that stands out to me as one of his key games, and that's the type of player you're keeping on this defense.
He mentioned that he can't stress enough how much it means to be part of what's going to be built here and what's continuing to be building here, not only with this defense, but when you see just his leadership and the presence that he has on this defense, how crucial is that?
Yeah, I think, well, one, when you reward a guy like Zach Allen, Courtland Sutton, I think it sends the right message to the locker room that if you do things the right way, like these are the guys we're taking care of, and you can be that next guy. And so it sends a message like that, but then Zach Allen just works so incredibly hard. I think he shows it by showing up every day. He said, I love this. This is my life. He cares deeply, and somebody asked him essentially, like, how do you stay motivated? It's clear that won't be an issue. He's a great role model for those younger guys in the room. And listen, going into the last year of his deal, maybe they would have figured things out later. Who knows what would have happened after the season? Like, it's still possible he would have stayed, but when you get deals done ahead of time like this, it just reduces the headache. There's no drama. And so nice to see this get done.
Well, we've heard some of the guys say iron sharpens iron, and Zach Allen spoke about that, just about his teammates being able to, test him out and like give him new ways to experiment with things. It's something that he definitely wants to do during training camp, and it's something that he values, knowing that his teammates are going to push him to that next level. Well, the Broncos held a scrimmage-like practice on Saturday, and we saw some exciting plays on the field. Head coach Sean Payton said he was pleased overall with the day. What did you see from the team?
Yeah, I thought there were some big plays on both sides. Bo Nix made kind of a sidearm throw early to Devon Bailey that was really impressive. A beautiful fade to Courtland Sutton, who went up and caught a jump ball essentially over Pat Surtain. Surtain kind of answered earlier in practice. He had an interception his second consecutive day with a pick for Surtain. And then kind of all over the place, you just saw guys making plays. And what stood out, I think, particularly about this practice is that Sean Payton said you can have say you have a goal line run session in a normal practice, you know what's coming. If you're the defense, if you're the offense, you're just kind of running the same thing, not the same play, but the same situation. It's a little bit easier to kind of get in the right mindset. When you're doing move the ball situations, which the Broncos did for a lot of this practice, you're tested in a different way. And Sean Payton said, hey, 1 second, you're defending at the 50. The next, you're down in the red zone. You got to make sure they don't get in there. If you're Sean Payton, you go from one set of calls to a completely different one. If you're Bo Nix, you got to decide kind of if it's a hurry up, how are we kind of moving through this? And so it tests you mentally in a way that is closer to quote unquote real football. And Sean Payton said that, hey, we're making steps toward that. We're going to have a joint practice against the Niners next week. That's a preseason game that is closer to real football. And then finally, when you game plan and get ready for week 1, that's the real thing. And so this is a step in that direction, and I just think it tests you in a way. We've been here every day for the last 6 days. It splits things up a little bit and makes it a little more, maybe engages you mentally if you're a player. So I thought it was a good day of work.
And head coach Sean Payton did mention that there are some things that they need to clean up, but the good news is that they have a month to do that. But what can you learn from these scrimmage-like practices?
Yeah, I think one, I always, especially with Bo Nix being kind of a younger quarterback still, his ability to kind of string these practice periods together or bounce back from a negative play, I think it still gives you a chance to see kind of which guys individually are making standout catches or interceptions or kind of blowing up a run play. We mentioned Zach Allen at the top of this. He had a play where he would have had a sack and maybe potentially ended a drive. So you can still see those individual things, but then I think it just gives you a better evaluation of, again, kind of what real football kind of looks like. And listen, we're more than halfway done with training camp. We're inching closer to the regular season. While there is a month to go before the Broncos play that game against the Titans, we are inching closer to joint practices, the preseason games, and eventually making those roster decisions. And so these practices matter. They're part of your resume. Sean Payton talks about that every single day is part of your resume. So gives the Broncos a chance to maybe have a little bit of a different column on that resume and polish it up a little bit.
Well, Broncos country, we have you covered every day of Broncos camp, and the Broncos will be off on Sunday before returning to the field on Monday. And for the latest, make sure you visit denverbroncos.com.